Well, I am here with my dear soul brother, Neville Billimoria. And I just feel so blessed and inspired by Neville because, you know, when we're talking about the concept of awakened conscious leadership, Nev and I are co-conspirators in the San Diego community over here. And Neville is widely regarded as one of the most inspiring leaders, doing incredible work in civic engagement in the community. And everybody that knows Nev thinks of Nev as a wise elder. You're not that old, Nev, but you have that. I'm thinking about Chip Connolly when you're talking about kind of, this embodiment of wise elderhood. When I think of, the concept of awakened conscious leadership, you are, an inspiration to all of us over here in the local community. And I trust as Neville talks, you'll see why. But I want to tee up who Neville is, and then I'm going to invite Neville to share a little bit more about himself. So Neville is the Senior Vice President for Marketing, Membership and Marketing, and the Chief Advocacy Officer of Mission Federal Credit Union. So to put that into perspective, Mission Federal Credit Union here is in San Diego. It's a $4.5 billion institution, and it's the largest financial services institution that's exclusively based in San Diego. So the fact that Mission Federal has given you the title Chief Advocacy Officer says something about Mission Federal as well. So I'm going to want to create a pivot point for that. And then I want you to share about, what you're doing in the area of community of civic engagement over here. And then you've also got a background, when you talk about kind of, part of this, you're channeling deep wisdom from the wisdom traditions. And so you have that part. So I want you to elaborate on that. And then you're also a very inspiring thought leader and speaker and trainer as well. And we've done work together. I feel blessed to have served with you. So I know I can testify to how inspiring you are there as well. So Nev, I would love to just invite you to elaborate on any of that and to begin wherever you want to begin.
Well, first of all, Danny, I'm humbled and honored to do this with you. I was getting on this call to shine the light on you, but as is, typical Danny style, Dr. Danny style, you're flipping the script and putting it, reflecting it right back. So blessings for that. I'm happy to answer and share all of that, but hopefully we can move into the other aspects, flip it too. So this cuts both ways. So absolutely, yeah, I've been blessed to work at Mission Federal Credit Union for the last 18 years. Let's not get too bound up in titles, but really what I have the privilege of doing is focusing on our building of our brand, growing our membership, and in the context of this conversation, all of our community engagement and civic engagement strategies. And so to that end, we, as a double bottom line financial service institution, are really focused not just on financial performance, but on social purpose. And so one way we keep score, as we know from conscious capitalism, et cetera, single bottom line was just profit. Double bottom line was what I just mentioned, including social performance. Triple bottom line, people, planet, profit. Quadruple bottom line, people, planet, profit, purpose. Yeah. And so trying to move the world of work and slash the boundaries, the silos of not-for-profit, for-profit, whatever your legal designation is, and show up in spirit of service of all the stakeholders, again, using a tenet from conscious capitalism, is how can we ensure that we take care of our member owners, because we're not bound to shareholders? How do we take care of our employees? How do we understand and value and bring value back to our community? So all of our stakeholders matter. And I have the privilege of moving the needle on that and influencing, because leadership is an active influence, as we've talked about, a better social contagion than the pandemic we're dealing with right now. Thank you very much. And maybe a good antidote for that. I get the privilege of focusing on our nonprofit partners and impact investment with philanthropy and serving on boards and things like that. So that's the role in my world of work that I have the privilege of working on. And yes, deep gratitude to Mission Fed for giving me the space to manifest that in what would be historically a more business context.
Yeah, well, that's extraordinary. And so I'm so inspired. So you sit on a number of boards, or you involved in a number of community. Can you just give us a taste of how you move that mission out of, that you've been gifted by Mission Federal? How do you actually move that into the community? So, how do you engage the community with?
Well, good corporate citizenry can show up in different flavors, right? So there's checkbook philanthropy, where owners or organizations might have some discretionary capital that they want to invest back into the community. Checkbook philanthropy is not our thing. In the classic 3 T's of time, treasure, talent, we have some discretionary capital to provide, but we think there's other ways to make a difference of consequence. So really it's the time and talent pieces where I get to, in addition to our corporate giving, to help support local organizations. And we were birthed on a bar desk in the County Office of Education. And so education has been our initial field of membership. So we have deep partnerships. We bank, because credit unioning is not a verb yet. I'm working on it. But we bank 29 of the 43 local school districts. So we have deep relationships with many of them. And I serve as a thought partner to some of the superintendents. I work with them on leadership and culture, much like you and I have worked on leadership and culture. So one category is the whole world of education. From higher ed, I happen to be on the UCSD Alumni Board and been on that since 2008, to K through 12, which is where our primary focus is. So in addition to that, there's the nonprofit space with both the nonprofits and the philanthropy. And there I sit on some boards, including the Ackermann Foundation, which is a private foundation. So by having some insights, not only into the entirety of the educational construct from K through higher ed, ideally the infinite learning curricula as lifelong learners that hopefully we all are, so it doesn't really end with academia, as well as seeing community foundations, private foundations, different structures of giving has enabled me and afforded me a broad lens. And then I'm able to share what one particular group may do in a different category.
That's so you are already a connector. You're developing wisdom in one area and you're bringing that wisdom into another area. So this is just such a good model for understanding that in being involved in different organizations, you can be a bridge and you can cross-pollinate the genius that you're learning in each. So here you've got this insight in this area. Can you mention some of the other organizations that you're also involved in, that from which you draw additional wisdom that creates the synergy?
Sure. Well, an obvious one, because of the tenure on the UCSD Alumni Board since 2008 in various roles, including on the executive committee, it's been really fun to see their alumni base grow and our membership base grow, and then compare and contrast best practices, next practices in a public university system versus in a San Diego County hyperlocal organization. And so both are trying to build engagement, both are building membership, both are trying to create value for the brand. And so as I probably learn as much from UC San Diego and other experiences like that I can bring back to Mission Fed and vice versa. So it really is not a one-way street. And it is a cool model because you're constantly being exposed to different orientations, different ideas, different principles and practices. And so building communities of practice, regardless of, again, staying in that stovepipe, has been super illuminating. And we haven't even got to the wisdom tradition side of it. This is
before we get to the wisdom tradition, let's stay in this lane, because in this place of community and civic engagement, because we serve in leadership in Conscious Capitalism, San Diego chapter of Conscious Capitalism. You were critical in founding the Chamber of Purpose here in San Diego. So could you share about those two organizations, these two organizations that feed your heart and soul. And then we're also, interestingly enough, we're involved in some mastermind groups as well. That is kind of like enriching us. So maybe we should mention, I think, that as well.
Yeah.
So, but let's put that at the end, because I want to also, acknowledge Elizabeth Dreiser and Kilu Sanborn. I think they're an important part of the community as well. So let's just thread our way there.
Great. So that was you and I's birth story with the American Marketing Association Cause Conference coming up, and we were trying to look for a way to move it from just nonprofits, which it historically had been focused on cause marketing. And if you look at that space really quickly, it's evolved from cause marketing to cause branding to corporate social responsibility to now operationalizing this within your organization. So we recognized that a purpose orientation was going to be super important, and we didn't want to limit it to nonprofits. So we invited this trifecta of the American Marketing Association, Conscious Capitalism, which at the time you were part of the board and ended up.
I remember. So this is our founding story, right? This is the place we met. So just, and that was, am I right in remember, this was the Cause Conference here in San Diego. It's a, which is kind of, it's had a long tradition, this Cause Conference, and it was, as you said, run by the American Marketing Association. And then we came together as a partnership. And at the time I was serving as co-chair of the San Diego chapter of Conscious Capitalism. And you, in your capacity within Mission Fed, we were actually doing a partnership between the American Marketing Association, the Conscious Capitalism here in San Diego, and then there was also, I believe, the San Diego, the foundation. There was a third. Can you just remind me?
The third one is actually the Chamber of Purpose, which was just emerging as a social experiment, which is where your trigger question came from. Is here we were trying to stand up these social experiments in how to reimagine the ecosystem.
Exactly. So we all came together. And this was, I think, in 2017. Am I right?
So,
and we actually put on a big conference. I think over 400 attendees, and it was, I think, through your connection, we hosted it at UCSD in this beautiful conference center. Right. So it was a very big event, and you and I served as co-chairs of the event, and that's where we got to know each other. Exactly. We got to know each other and became soul brothers in that, because we wanted to embody the spirit of what we were trying to do. And I just want to say that was one of the most extraordinary experiences of my life, to partner on that event with you.
Well, that's where I fell in love with you. It was a couple of meetings, and right away I was like, this is the real deal. Not only the intellectual background, the physician, the executive coaching, the organizational savvy and snaps you had, but just you were a downright nice person. And I'm like, I want to spend more time with this guy. I'm sucked in. I mean, that's how it all began.
And that's, and I just want to say that since that time, Neville and I have become really soul brothers. And we, the foundation of our partnership is friendship, and all the work we do is on that foundation. So I hope you're feeling the love that me and Nev are expressing over here, because it makes our work joyful and it makes our ability. So I just want to say that, part of the learning lesson that I've learned is that when things work well, it's relationship before task. It's relationship before task. And every touch point with Neville, my deepest wish is on this call, in this touch point, have we advanced our relationship so that we can continue doing this good work together. So Nev and Nev has the same sensibility. He's very, he has the amount of text messages that I've received from Nev, just touch points, calling with concern, loving on me as I'm going through my cancer journey. I just want you to know there's a backstory of soul nourishment that I'm receiving from Nev that may not be apparent on this call, because we're talking about, some meaningful things over here, but I want you to know that there's a foundation below that.
No doubt. No doubt.
So Nev, picking up on that, I know we're both entranced right now. It's easy to lose a thread. So we met in at the Cause Conference. That's where we connected. And then we could you mention, well, we both now serve on the advisory board of Conscious Capitalism here in San Diego. So we're doing that work together. But can you mention a little bit more about the Chamber of Purpose? Because that was your inspiration. And what was your thought about what you were trying to do in changing the ecosystem here in San Diego as it relates to the Chamber of Purpose?
Well, again, back to quadruple bottom line, people, planet, profit, purpose. My inquiry, appreciative inquiry, hopefully, was how can we stand up a new ecosystem that is in support of meaning and purpose and fulfillment, and making that part of the repertoire. And I was recognizing that up to that point, I wasn't seeing this cross-pollination of nonprofits and entrepreneurs and onco-careerists and philanthropists. I was seeing everybody just doing their own thing. And so my question to myself and to the community was, could we come together and ideate a different model? The jury is still out. It's a social experiment, but the spirit hasn't changed, and the aspiration to do that hasn't changed.
I remember when you were writing it up, you wrote up a little blurb, and in San Diego, there's a very vigorous Chamber of Purpose here in San Diego, and San Diego's tagline is the finest city in America, right? And what I loved what you did with the Chamber of Purpose, you said, well, let us actually expand that to not only being the finest city, in the country, but also the kindest city, which really speaks to the heart of who you are. Would you want to elaborate on just a little bit of the vision that you had for that?
So San Diego, people don't realize it, but it's one of the largest binational regions on the whole planet because of Tijuana. So my tagging our great city was to not make it America's finest city, but America's kindest and most purposeful region. And again, and that's bridging the gap, expanding it beyond just the confines of some artificial border that may or may not exist politically, and being thoughtful about if we're going to manifest this new economy and this new way of being, kindness had to be, so the empathy, compassion piece had to be an integral part of that. It couldn't just be fine for fine's sake.
And it's not lost to me in this past administration how the border separation actually threatened, and what we were seeing, kind of like the painful separations at the border, was the complete antithesis of kindness and empathy. And so the need right now at this time for healing, it makes that rededication even more purposeful at this time. Would you say?
Undoubtedly. I mean, the difference is the only thing we have in common, and we've allowed our differences to really separate us and not learn from our differences. All the studies on innovation suggest that ideation rate is the key driver of innovation. And one of the key drivers of ideation rate is diversity of thought, diversity of ideas, diversity of participants. So it's enlightened self-interest to have a more diverse organization, more diverse people, more diverse orientation. Yet we have behaved into and learned through our implicit biases and systemic orientations how that may not be true. And our goal is to chip away at that so that we can get back to our inherent understanding of our universal connection to one another, our humanity, our brotherhood. We use that word amongst ourselves, often. And so absolutely, it now more than ever, a kindness frame. Hey, COVID just made us all realize, I don't care which side of the tracks you live on or whatever, we can all infect each other, or we can all support each other. So just another global, wake up call.
Yeah. And I just want to kind of, I know this is in your heart, but I want to be explicit about this. We often talk about brotherhood, but it's, when we say brotherhood, we're saying sisterhood as a synonym.
Amen.
And we're saying humanityhood as a way of including every race, every sexual orientation, every religious orientation. It's humanityhood. Whenever we're saying something like hood, whatever hood we're using, ultimately it's humanityhood, right?
Indeed. Absolutely.
And in conscious capitalism, we're in service of elevating humanityhood for the benefit of all. And that's the healing orientation. Yeah. So, Nev, where else do you draw inspiration from? Like what is, help us understand. I mean, you are, truly a unique individual, because you come from the moment I met you. I think it's interesting. I think what what my cancer has catalyzed, if anything, is an evolution towards where you are already in your life right now. I've been so inspired by you. The moment I met you, I looked at you and I said, wow, this is a deep soul. I mean, I wonder, can you give us an insight about the core of what drives you, like your background, how you grew up, and your wisdom traditions that you take inspiration from? So I just want to understand, that founding of who you've become.
Well, it's your universal hood of humanity is probably the jumping off point. I was born in India. My mother's English, my dad's Indian. Growing up, the Indian kids would say I was English and ostracize me, and vice versa. So I had to find a third way, and I had to, the wound where the gap, the crack where the light came in at the time was brutally hard, because I felt like I didn't belong, and issues of belonging and measuring up have continued to haunt and plague me to this day. But I said, there's got to be a third way. There's got to be a more integrated way of being. I can't believe one of my parents is going to go to hell because of their religious beliefs, as an example. Fast forward the tape, and spiritual and wisdom traditions of the East, which were part of my personhood, got manifested through my practice of martial arts. And I was blessed to have a very gifted teacher, a sensei, who was an MD, PhD, super intellectual, but a Renaissance man. He was a mountaineer. We hiked the John Muir Trail together.
Can you give voice to his name, just so?
Sensei Raymond Richard Castellona. Absolutely. Yeah. In Redlands, California. And and he sadly passed from lung cancer, never having smoked a day in his life. Another one of those cosmic questions that we all, question: why did it happen? How did it happen? We don't know those. We'd never know those answers. But like you, Danny, he lived fully, and he embraced the moment, and he turned the terminal condition into an opportunity for full celebration of life. And so I had a chance to, that was my first ability to see how to live fully, and not see death as some thing that the West sucks at doing, but as something that we're all going to deal with. So let's lean in and understand and embrace how it can give us spark and understanding of a way of knowing. But that's a little sidebar. The short answer to your question is my own wounds help. I try to turn my stumbling blocks into stepping stones. And because I felt held down or misunderstood or not fitting in, I wanted other people to feel fitting in and belonging. So as we've discussed with Maslow's hierarchy, with psychological safety and creating that safe space for people to feel be who they are, include love and belonging, and open our hearts and empathetic nature to one another, to then ideally make space for significance and purpose, which, here we go, even the Western construct is reinforcing what the East teaches a somewhat different way. But the wisdom traditions for me became another way of knowing. We tend to privilege public knowledge, but this is private knowledge. This is inner experience born from your own practice, from authentic embodied experience.
Well, that's why I think, we were so aligned, because my work has been around leading well from within, and you came from that orientation from leading well from within. Both of us came to this expression of who we are and our life's purpose work actually through suffering. So I want you to hear that if you're suffering right now, the way you lean into that might well be your gift right now. That might well be your gift. That suffering can be a gift, a doorway into creating glorious beauty and meaning within your own life, which gives you the ability to awaken. It's interesting. When we go through suffering, we can either go down the rabbit hole into suffering and self-pity, or we can come to a place of embracing ourselves with self-compassion and kindness. And that's ultimately the only way through. That's the only thing that makes sense when you're experiencing deep suffering. Beating up on yourself, beating the shit out of yourself doesn't make any, and doesn't serve humanity at all. You serve nobody by beating up on yourself. The only thing that makes sense is to pivot into self-compassion. And in that self-compassion, what arrives is a greater empathy for yourself first, that gives you the capacity to have greater empathy for others around you. until you make that ninja move, because we're talking now martial arts, until you make that ninja move, you don't have the capacity to be of service in your life. So if you're experiencing suffering right now, please, please, for the sake of yourself and for the sake of humanity, allow yourself to shift in your suffering into bringing immense self-compassion into your life. Because what happens then, as you make meaning of your journey in the container of self-compassion, what emerges is a sense of purpose, where you now have the capacity, as Nev and I have experienced this transition, where we're now wanting to actually move. We claim our personal transformation only for the purpose of giving it away. Only for the purpose of giving it away, and not in a way that proselytizes. This is not in a way of being, Nev and I aren't your gurus. You're your guru, right? You're your guru. And so what we want to do is inspire you to find the heart of your self-compassion so that you can show up as an inspiration to others in the world. The way that I've crystallized out my journey, Nev, and I mentioned this at the end of the introduction in my book, Leading Well from Within. End of the introduction ends with me sharing my personal vow. I vow to live my life from home. Now, let me just be very clear. What that's become for me, I vow to live my life from home, is a place of grounded wholeness that is anchored in being in the force field of miracles, being connected to spirit. I vow to live my life from home. And when I get lost, find my way back, and find my way back stronger for the learning that happens. Like I become lost, and then I say, wow, I'm lost, but that's a teacher itself. I can now come back home stronger than before. I vow to live my life from home. When I get lost, find my way back. And then third part is, and to inspire others to live from their homes too. So I don't want them to come into my home. I don't want people to come into my temple. I want them to sit in their temple, in their direct access to the source of inspiration, whatever you may call that, your deeper source of wisdom, God, the collective loving consciousness, Indira's net, whatever your experience of this something larger than yourself is. I don't want you to have to go through an intermediary, like a church, that you have to actually kind of pay homage to the priests that give you access politically. That was never the intent. That was the corruption. And I'm not talking about, when I'm talking about the church, I'm talking about all religions. I want to think about the politicization of all religions. Any religion whose political ideology has a way of saying, I'm holier than thou. You need to act my way to get access to this source. That's the corruption of religions. I think the inherent value of religion, Houston Smith used to say, well, Houston Smith, I hope he's still alive. I met him 8 years ago. He was quite elderly then. I hope he's still alive. But he's actually wrote the textbooks on comparative religion. And he distilled this down. He said, the wisdom of faith is compassion, guided by the loving, conscious field of however you describe the concept of God. The field is loving consciousness. Out of that field comes compassion. And if you look at the golden rule, treat others as you would want to be treated yourself, is an expression of compassion. That's the essence. Then you put the layers of politics in these various religious structures, and all of a sudden it becomes a battle of I'm holier than thou, and hence now you've got religious wars, which is not very compassionate. And it actually creates an incredible fragmentation. So when I say, I vow to live my life from home, when I get lost, find my way home, And then my deepest wish is, and to inspire you to live from home too, I want you to have direct access to that field without needing to go through an intermediary. And then if you happen to find a deeper sense of your faith in a community, whether it's the Catholic community, the Jewish community, the community of Islam, or whatever other, and you happen to find a deeper sense of faith within your community, God bless you. God bless you. But don't feel you need to pay attention to the rules of somebody else's rules to give you access. You have direct access to that right now.
Direct apprehension of reality is one articulated in St. Augustine when the building of the first church, which began the divisiveness of who's paying for it and what's going to happen, his quote was, "The problems have started." So we pay homage to the physical structure. We sometimes get mired in the political ramifications, but it's really, if you think about it, religion is man-made and spirituality is God-given. Christ didn't call himself Christian. He was Jewish. His followers did. Buddha didn't call himself Buddhist. He was a Hindu. His followers did. So there's some attribution that goes on. Next thing you know, we're in our little fiefdoms, and more people have died in the name of religion than anything else on this planet. So if we really want to honor God and spirit and truth, or whatever, however you choose to believe and define it, then maybe we need to have a more broad and accepting understanding of one another.
Wow, well, that seems like a drop the mic moment. Okay, I think that feels like a wonderful place to start wrapping up. And Nev, what I would like to just invite you to share is anything. I want to give you my final, I will preview my final closing, which is my expression of love for you and my expression of love for all of you listening. That's my final close. So whatever you want to put in between, I want to honor your voice in just reflecting perhaps what you've most appreciated in our conversation today, what you've most would feel compelled to share as we wrap up the sacred conversation. I consider this a sacred conversation. It's really what we've been talking about, this force field of miracles, this spiritual field. I don't feel that you and I have shared our genius. I believe that genius has arrived through us as a co-emergence between us. So I want to give my greatest appreciation to the source of inspiration that is guiding this conversation, because that's what it feels like to me. It doesn't feel like it's coming from me. It doesn't feel like it's coming from you. It's coming from the space between us.
And that's why I love you, Danny. That's there's so little friction and so much light, because when at least in our relationship, we're able to set aside all the machinations and ego and all of that and reach for that higher source and in service of something bigger and more important than us. And you again, look at this interview. Most of the time you've gushed it all up on me when I came here today to be in service and of support for you. So I think that's typical Dr. Danny. People pay attention. This is how you show up in the world, and you subordinate yourself to something bigger, whatever you choose to call that. And hopefully it's in spirit of elevating humanity, all of humanity. Danny, you lead authentically without any pretension. You foster love and belonging, and like you said, relationship before task. You care deeply and model what it is to be whole. The root of the word health, as you've taught me, is wholeness, and the patient means to suffer, and many of us suffer. And your appeal some minutes ago to everybody, if you're suffering, to pivot towards that wholeness and turn those cracks into opportunities for the light to get through to your deepest self, and turn your wounds into your next manifestation for yourself, and by extension for the planet. So I'm deeply, deeply grateful to have spent time with you, learn from you, train with you, co-create with organizations, and create spaces together around this work. So that's what I would leave today's conversation with: deep gratitude and respect for how you have modeled what it is to be human and what it is to be superhuman, not as in a comic character, but just to to bring divinity to the mortality that we all face. And I'm deeply grateful to you, Danny, for that. Thank you.
Well, Nev, I'm deeply grateful to you, my brother. And, you know, as you were saying, you know, that I taught you that the root of the word health is wholeness. I want to just share with you that when I did an interview with Scott Shannon, Dr. Scott Shannon, who's kind of the world authority on integrative mental health and healing. And he said, actually, there's another dimension of this. He taught me that there's another dimension, that the root of the word health is not only wholeness, it's also holy. And for me, this has been a holy conversation. This has been a holy conversation. And I feel so awe-inspired to be in this conversation with you that's channeling a larger conversation that's coming from the biggest, us being connected to something larger than ourselves. And I just want to say, I love and appreciate you. I love and appreciate you. And then, as I always do, I want to look straight into the camera and I want to say, I love and appreciate you. I love and appreciate you. And I hope this conversation has served you well.
Blessings, Danny.
Thank you, Nav.